That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in. Thanks to you for supporting the show. Want to give a little extra shout out to my boy Robbie from Humans. If you haven't checked out any of their music, please do so. Help support them. DasHumans.com. That's DAS Humans.com. They got all kinds of good tracks on there. Quick question for you. What are you using to help support your recovery? Are you doing meetings? Are you doing podcasts? If you're listening to this, it's probably more than likely that you use podcasts as a component of that. I want to offer you something else, and even better, it's free. Have you checked out the I Am Sober app? Yes, the I Am Sober app. I Am Sober is helping all kinds of people out there just like you get sober and stay sober. And like I said before, best of all, the app is free. You can get an overview of your sobriety milestones. You can track how much money you saved, and you kind of look back and see how much you were spending. What you do is you plug in a daily amount. I think my daily amount I plugged in, I think I had it originally set to $10, and I think I upped it to 20 because I started doing some calculating as I looked at it more. So if I have mine set at $20, that would equate to me saving I'm looking at the app right now, $30,780. That's over a period of 4 years, 2 months, and 17 days as of today. So that's a couple of the things that you get when you have the I Am Sober app in your pocket. You can also get daily motivation. There's a little tab for motivation where you can get a quick little, something to light a fire under your ass if you start feeling like you're not feeling so good. There's also a support tab. So if you want some help finding support in your area or anywhere at that, you can click on that tab too. Here's where you can get the I Am Sober app. You can go to iamsoberapp.com. That's iamsoberapp.com. You can get it there, of course. You can also go to thatsoberguy.com. On the right-hand side, there's a couple of links in there for getting it at the Google Play Store, the Apple Store, and of course, I already mentioned the I Am Sober app website. You can also download it there too. We're going to get to our guest today, Dr. Nancy Irwin. We had a great conversation. Dr. Irwin is down in the Southern California area, Los Angeles. Dr. Irwin has a large resume, so I'm going to save that for the intro. Let's get to her right now. Here's Dr. Nancy Irwin. Dr. Irwin is an addiction therapist who specializes in hypnotherapy, as well as other holistic approaches for treating addictive behaviors, sexual abuse, recovery, and other traumas. Dr. Irwin is also the author of U-Turn, Changing Direction in Midlife, and which is a collection of over 40 stories of people over 40 who have made amazing transitions in midlife. Dr. Irwin's also been featured in a wide variety of media outlets, including CNN, CNBC, Fox, MSNBC. Dr. Irwin, you have a plethora of information in the bio here, so I'm going to let you go into a little more detail about it because you can probably tell a little bit more about your experience and projects you're working on yourself. But first, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time today to sit in with us.
Well, thank you so much, Shane. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a very worthy cause.
I appreciate it. I honestly could say there's no agenda in this platform other than providing some great content and hopefully some resources for those out there listening to help them. So I appreciate that. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what your background is.
Well, I'm originally from Georgia, like you can't tell. And, I moved to New York City in 1985 to become a stand-up comic.
Really?
And oh yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
I had a
awesome.
I had a modicum of success. I don't know if you've ever heard of these people, but Jerry Seinfeld, Ray Romano, nobody here
Yeah, no,
tells.
I don't think I've ever heard of those guys. No, I have no idea.
Exactly. Maybe one day they'll make it.
I just speaking of that, I just watched Jerry Seinfeld he went back and revisited the first comic club that he did in New York City. My wife and I had watched it. And
I know it well. I stood on that stage and worked out many times.
No way. That's what I was going to ask. That was my next question. So was that the spot that you started? I don't remember the name, but...
It was the comic strip on the Upper East Side. It's a great club. I did work there. I also worked at Stand Up New York and the Boston Comedy Club, the New York Comedy Club, the Improv, all of them. And you start off working, anywhere.
It's a tough business, huh?
Well, I did well. I ended up working in about 36 of our 50 states and a couple of international tours, so I did okay.
That is awesome.
It was a good working comic, but I moved to L.A. in 1994 because I heard Hollywood needed more blondes. I was staff MC at the Improv there. And, when you're a comic, you only work about 30 minutes a day. So I was pretty bored, had a lot of time on my hands. Yeah. So I started volunteering for a community shelter for sexually abused teens. It absolutely waked up the healer in me. And, for me, comedy was, being a stand-up, it's a solo activity. You're naturally narcissistic because it's all about you.
Yeah.
So it just really underscored, oh my God, there are people out there in the world who are strung out. They're pregnant by their pimps. These kids, they're suicidal. And I'm worried about my hair and who's in the audience to see me and get me a sitcom.
Huh.
So
yeah.
It really waked me up, and I thought there's something else I'm meant to do. So I went back and got my doctorate in psychology, and voila.
Yeah. That's that's kind of neat to think that your background in comedy and you had a career in comedy, and then you kind of dive almost head first into treatment and treating kids who are sexually abused, which is, thank you for the work that you're doing, number one, and number two, I guess what I'm getting at with the background in comedy is it's such a serious and it's such a deep topic. That type of work. Have you been able to incorporate some of the lightness in the comedy? And I'm not. So I don't really know how to phrase this right without saying,
I know what you're asking.
Yeah. So let me just stop right there. Then I'll kind of let you take over if you understand what I'm saying. Like, how do you do that?
Well, when appropriate, yes, humor helps. It's naturally healing. In fact, with the topic we're speaking about today, drug addiction, this is one of the modalities that I use to help people heal. It may sound crazy, get off heroin with humor, but I got to tell you, it is a natural modality for healing. Yeah. It steals your focus away from physical pain, financial pain, or whatever else, the trauma that you're overcoming. That is one of many. Of course, there are plenty other ways. But what happens when people get, not to shift gears, but talking about the opioid epidemic, what helps people get off of that, crazy train and find a natural painkillers. When somebody's been on opioids for a long time, the body's natural painkillers give up. Yeah. They just throw up their hands and go, hey, you don't need us anymore. And so that's why it's so painful detoxing, among other reasons. So what we do is we incorporate and we strongly suggest, in addition to non-narcotic pain relievers for those who need it, is natural healing techniques. And of course, the power of the mind is as powerful as any drug. Because look, when you think about it, human thought does exactly what a drug does. It thwarts the message from the brain to the central nervous system to send more euphoria, to block pain, etc. Yeah. One can learn to do that with the power of the mind. Easier said than done.
Yeah. But it is possible, and I think that what is the element that you see with people coming in who actually want the help versus people who are coming in who maybe have been placed there, forced there by a court system, or what's the difference between that?
Well, of course, it works best, and those have more longevity with sobriety if it's their own choice.
Yeah.
We certainly have a great percentage of people who come in, it's been a family intervention or they're court mandated. And we try to work with them and point that out, that it's got to be their choice.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we want them to follow the law and avoid jail or whatnot and please their family, but it's got to come from them. And so one technique that I use is we make a list of what's really important to you.
Yeah.
And it's got to be more important to be healthy and have a great life, family life, job, etc., whatever your goals are, than to avoid temporary pain or to seek that pleasure and have the euphoria.
Now, over 52,000 overdose deaths, I think it was in 2015. The numbers don't lie. Obviously, there's a huge problem in the country with it. I don't know that there's any right answer to this, so I'm not asking you for that. But in your opinion, to put it blunt, I mean, what can we do about that? Like,
I think there's a lot we can do. And Shane, I've done a lot of interviews about the opioid epidemic recently, and I swear to God, every time I do one, the numbers are increasing.
Yeah.
It's shocking. I mean, just even 2 weeks ago, the numbers have skyrocketed since then. And I think now the latest count with the CDC, they tell me it's about 33,000 per year.
Yeah, wow, that's incredible. And that's just that's for opioids alone, right? About 33,000. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Unbelievable.
Now, alcohol, it's about 88,000. And ironically, with smoking cigarettes, it's about 480,000 per year that we lose. So we do have to have perspective. I know.
Yeah.
And usually with opioids, of course, smoking is longer, it's stretched out over many decades most of the time.
Yeah.
But these are all, addictions are a serious, serious thing. But I like to see people get addicted to something that is positive.
Yeah.
So again, getting back to the natural painkillers that we're all equipped with from birth, if we're blessed to be born with a normal, healthy body, we have these magical things called endorphins. And there's lots of ways to release those in a natural way. We already hit on laughter as one thing. Go to a comedy club, rent a Chris Rock special, or Kevin Hart, or Robin Williams, even though he's passed away sadly, but his work lives, or whoever your favorite comic is, and just laugh your butt off. That will definitely release endorphins.
Yeah, definitely.
Anytime you move your body, physical exercise, of course, anytime you move. Look, human beings are meant to move. Years ago, if we didn't move, we didn't eat. So we need to move, and that releases endorphins. Of course, being out in nature, anything beautiful that's around you, sports, animals, children, if you like them, being in the water, in the ocean is naturally healing. In a hot bath, meditation, self-hypnosis, all of these things, making love, all of these things are naturally healing. The creative arts, of course, if you play an instrument or you sing, it doesn't matter if you suck. The point is to express yourself and get those endorphins working for you. And that's going to dial down the pain. I don't care what the source is, even if it's, arthritis or some excruciating pain. Being active and expressing yourself and being in a state of joy somehow is definitely going to help you.
Yeah, no, it's such a great point. And you're finding that alternative wavelength almost to connect with. I know for me, I'm a musician. I love to play guitar. And sing and write. And one of the things I had struggled with myself was a lot of the time I spent writing music and playing music and recording music, I was high when I did. And so when I got sober, the transition, I still love to play music, but it was a different experience for me to do it sober. And so I almost had to relearn it. And I'll tell you what, it is 10 times better when I sit down now and have a little fun and play a guitar with my son or with my brother-in-law or one of my buddies. And it is very therapeutic. So there's all types of different things that we can do, but how do we take somebody who is really in the trenches of that addiction and start to introduce them to maybe something that they were passionate about as a kid that they can kind of rekindle in their spirit and find again?
It's usually pretty easy to ask people those questions because everybody loves something, or they did when they were a kid.
Yeah.
And it may be hard to think of it in the moment when they are in excruciating pain and they have a lot of anger and maybe some unresolved trauma, which is a huge thing to work through.
Yeah, yeah.
But most people open right up. If you ask them, what did you love to do as a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? Even if it was something that seems unattainable, like an astronaut or a cowboy or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that is a place to start. You can study Wild West history without being a comic. You can do something with the space program without becoming an astronaut. But it's exploring something that you are passionate about. Because here's the deal. You can't really focus on two things at once.
Yeah.
We all think we can multitask, and we know what happens when we try to do that. We usually end up half-assing everything, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a wonderful goal to learn how to monotask. So it's focusing on one thing. And even if you are in excruciating detox symptoms, focus on that.
Yeah.
If you try not to focus on it or cover it up, it's gonna be exacerbated.
Yeah.
So I have people just sort of face it and accept it and know that it is finite. And then it does begin to pass.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of ways to help that. We don't say cover it up, but we do help hasten it.
Yeah.
By changing focus.
Well, you mentioned trauma definitely once and maybe even twice since we first started chatting. And one of the things I've kind of experienced and learned about in my own recovery is, that the alcohol, the drugs was really, that was my tool to deal with all of the things that I had never dealt with in life. So, my past or my present, experience at the time. How important is that when you're getting in there and you're starting to work with somebody, in trying to help them understand that, yes, they may have a problem with drugs, with alcohol, but there's more to it than that, I guess. It's a life experience,
Of course. Look, who would choose to be a drug addict or an alcoholic?
Yeah. I didn't wake up one day and say, hey, I want to be a drug addict. No.
Yeah, exactly. There's a positive intent behind every bit of human behavior. And that was the best you could do at the time to deal with whatever extraordinary pain you had in your background. So 90 to 95% of our clients are trauma-based.
Yeah.
So when you get to the root of if you get to the root of the why, then the how of getting off the addictive cycle is infinitely easier. And you give yourself permission, you forgive yourself for choosing that coping mechanism. It was probably the only thing you had at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you work through this, and this is exactly what drew me into this field. I'm maybe this, not phrasing this right, but I'm fascinated with trauma. Or actually, I'm fascinated with how resilient the human spirit is.
Yeah.
So working in the field of trauma and recovery from that is my life's passion. And of course, unfortunately, that is pretty much, like I said, the whopping majority of addictions.
Yeah. Is it hard for you, dealing with certain situations? I mean, I'm sure you see a lot of heartbreaking things in the work that you're doing. How are you able to separate that, not bring it home with you?
Exactly. Well, we are trained in the field to sort of change hats, and I literally close the door on my office when I go home, and I've become a master at self-care. Yeah. So I do all those things we talked about earlier. I watch a lot of comedies.
Yeah.
I get a lot of massages. I work out a lot. I have a lot of other interests and positive people and things that remind me that life is good and that there is recovery.
Yeah. I noticed a lot of the recovery programs out there that I've come in contact with or met or people that are involved in it. They're really incorporating a really main focus on exercise, whether it's boxing or running or lifting weights, whatever it is. I know that's a part of my recovery too, trying to stay active, I guess.
Yep.
And you talked about that earlier, those endorphins. In a sense, you're kind of getting that natural high from being able to do that versus shooting dope or something. It's a little bit better for you, I think.
Absolutely. If everyone who's listening can just think of one peak experience, and it may be a long time ago, maybe it was when you won an award in Little League, or it may have been when you did a great speech, or you graduated college, or you had your first baby. Everybody's got some sort of peak experience. And if you could just think about that, if you can recall, and I hope you were sober at the time you got it, and just remember, just think about that day, that moment, how you felt in your body, who was around you. You can probably remember what day of the week it was, what the weather was like, what you were wearing.
Yeah.
All these details sort of get frozen in our memory in a positive situation like that, just like they do in a traumatic one.
Yeah.
But if you can get in touch with that and recall that, then you know what your body and your mind are capable of.
Yep.
And you start doing things that can give you that sensation again. Work in that field or study something or play Little League, whatever it was that made you feel so fulfilled and self-expressed. And everybody's got something like that they can relate to.
No, totally. And you're right on point there. And I want to give the listeners a quick example of that. When I was a kid, my grandfather used to take us backpacking. Every year we'd go up to the Marble Mountains up in Wairika, the Oregon, California border, and we'd take a week-long trip. As I went into my teens, I started getting in trouble and going down that path. And it wasn't until about two years ago I finally said, you know what, I want to get back into backpacking, and we've taken a couple trips then, and it's brought back a lot of those same feelings and those same that euphoric sense of not just being out in nature, but almost feeling like a kid again. And it's been really, really big in my recovery.
Absolutely. And what you're doing when you can recreate that mentally in the moment when you need to draw from that wellspring of comfort and joy and exhilaration. Yeah. What you're actually doing is self-hypnosis.
Really?
And absolutely. And you're reminding yourself that life is filled with wonderful moments. And if you can recreate those, whether in your mind or in reality, it's going to lessen the desire to harm yourself, which underneath it, you're trying to help yourself cope, of course. But ultimately, you are harming your body when you do that.
So what are some things that you're working on today, Dr. Irwin? Anything in particular, any projects or anything that you'd like to talk about?
Well, we do at Seasons work with all sorts of addictions, of course, alcohol and all substances. And frankly, we are seeing a lot more opiate, the prescription painkillers now, more than ever before. Of course, they're just swelling. And these are people who, of course, they were prescribed these. They had either post-surgery or a sports accident or sports injury and no other history of drug abuse. And all of a sudden they get hooked.
Yeah.
And they run out, and maybe some other things are going on in their life. And it just is too easy to try to doctor shop or end up buying it on the street. Fortunately, we're living in very exciting times where there are a lot of people who care about this issue.
Yeah.
And there's a thing called the prescription monitoring system, which you may have heard of, prescription monitoring program, which links pharmacies and healthcare providers to prevent overuse and dependency. So it is getting much harder for people to doctor shop and get the open prescriptions. Yeah. But unfortunately, they end up going to the black market, they buy it on the street, or they cut to something cheaper, which is heroin or fentanyl or something else on the street.
Yeah.
So again, the awareness is really, really increasing, and so are the treatment modalities. We, of course, strongly encourage people to enter therapy any way that they can. Maybe it's with a spiritual counselor or a school nurse or a 12-step program or a treatment facility near you to really get a hold of it before it gets a hold of you.
Huh. Yeah, that's good. That's good. One of the things I wanted to ask you, it's almost for my own selfish reasons, but I'm just going to roll with it because I think it's super interesting, and I think other people might find it interesting too, is I know you're a specialist in neurolinguistic programming, and I want to hear a little bit more about that, and I have a general understanding of it, but can you go into a little more detail about how that works?
Absolutely. NLP, Neurolinguistic Programming, is pretty much what the title would indicate. It's your neural pathways can change with the words that you use to program your mindset. We're naturally programmed from birth by those around us. And I don't just mean caregivers, parents, but also teachers, the media, our peers, and social.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There are tons of, really, it's mass hypnosis all around us.
Yeah.
No one gets through life unscathed. You're going to begin to get plugged into some limiting negative beliefs about yourself, also some positive ones. But what you want to do to be more realistic, instead of feeding into the negative limiting beliefs, for example, I'm a hopeless drug addict, I'm always going to relapse, nothing's going to help me, which is a very common belief I'm sure you've seen, and maybe you were caught up in, and we certainly see that. We want to change that programming while respecting the addiction, of course. We want to change that to plenty of people have gotten and stayed sober, and I'm going to be one of those.
I see.
I'm going to do whatever action steps it takes. So our words truly create our world, and what they do is they set up new neural pathways in the brain. Just like a wagon will have a rut in a muddy road, the wagon wheel will have the brain does that. It has all these, billions of neural pathways. You want to map over the old ones. That's how habits occur, because you go right back into the old pattern, not just a behavior, but the thought drives the behavior. So we want to give your brain new messages, new programming for success.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and I guess the light bulb went off for me. It's been a while now, but when I finally figured out the word TV programming, and I went, wait a minute, because you mentioned, media, all types of things that surround us, not just our parents, but there's all types of programming out there. The things that we're taking in are really creating, and they can shape our reality, our thoughts in a sense on the daily basis. So I think for me, that's why I'm constantly trying to surround myself with positive people versus people that might not be so positive, because that tends to reflect my own attitude.
Absolutely. And the environment you put yourself in is a hypnotic suggestion through the visual stimulation, not just the words, but everything. How many people start using and all of a sudden they start, quote unquote, looking like a drug addict?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Because that is a hypnotic suggestion. It's subliminal sometimes, but they took that and they start wearing that label, and monkey see, monkey do.
So when you talk about a label, because when you hear people say I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic, what's your take on that? Like for me, I've always kind of struggled with that, and I'm not saying that I don't have a problem or that somebody out there listening might not have a problem, but I tend to kind of lean more towards I have a problem with addiction in general, right? What do you think about labeling like that? What's your take on that?
I agree with you completely. And while at Seasons Recovery Centers, we're not a 12-step program, but we certainly offer that to people that do. It's like, whatever works for you, of course, we're willing to support that. And the 12 steps have saved incredible amounts of numbers of people from all sorts of addictions for decades now.
Yeah.
That being said, I do have one little caveat I would like to add to step one. Because step one is they encourage people to live into a label. I'm powerless over alcohol or heroin or sex or food or whatever the addiction is. And my take is you may be powerless once you have one drink because you're turning on your genetic switch, and then you have to have 8 or 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
But you are powerful enough to resist it and move on and make another choice.
Yeah, that's a good
point. I agree with you completely. I don't like labels. I mean, I prefer when people say I have suffered or I have struggled with an addiction, but they start speaking about it in the past, or at least in the progressive tense, so they're moving toward a state of health rather than feeling I'm hopeless and I always will be.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, If someone out there, we got a couple minutes left, I want to be respectful of your time, Dr. Irwin, and thanks again for coming on today. If someone out there listening, maybe themselves, maybe a family member, they're really struggling right now, what advice can you give them?
I would encourage the person, the last thing you want to do is tell someone what they have to do, or that they're bad, or to shame them. That doesn't work. That only makes it worse. It's like dealing with a toddler or a juvenile, and I'm not demeaning anyone, but that's the mindset. People are very resistant to someone telling them what to do.
Yeah.
What you want to do is set a healthy boundary. Unfortunately, I can't be around you if you're behaving this way. I hope you'll get clean. You know what the consequences are if you do continue this, but I trust that you'll make the best decision for yourself.
Yeah.
That's the healthiest thing you can say, because that gives them the power to make their own choice.
Well, and what about for the person that's struggling themselves out there right now, that maybe they know that they know that something's not right, they know that they're not feeling right, they know that they may have a problem, they're just not really sure what to do?
Well, there are plenty of websites where you can go to and take assessments. Doesn't hurt anyone, and it's free to go into any sort of 12-step program and just see if you relate, if you can relate to some of the stories you hear. Doesn't hurt to read the big book. It doesn't hurt to read any books about recovery. Doesn't hurt to talk to some of your family members and say, hey, you know me pretty well, what do you think?
Yeah.
Usually they will give you feedback. It's not a time for criticism or shaming again, but for realistic, helpful feedback, absolutely. And then, of course, maybe call a treatment, talk to your doctor and see what might be the best plan for you. If you're one of these people who can moderate with alcohol, and it's a sorting process of seeing what's going to work for you.
Yeah, that's good. Rule 62. One of my favorites. Don't take yourself so damn serious. With your background in comedy, come on, you got to have a recovery joke. Any recovery jokes you can share with us?
Oh, wow. Well, usually the one where people hear I was a comic in the background, I just say, look, and now I'm a shrink. I'm like, the road from comedy to mental health is very short indeed.
Yeah, that's funny. That's good stuff. Dr. Irwin, so if anyone wants to reach out to you, they want to get more info about you, where can you go? Yeah, social media, website, what can you leave them with? Yep,
Dr. Nancy Irwin, and that's with an I. IRWIN. It's just drnancyirwin.com, or they could go on seasonsmalibu.com. All my info is on there, and my phone numbers are on my own website, so I'm easy to find. Google me.
All right. Dr. Irwin, thanks so much for coming on Sober Guy Radio. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for the work you're doing. Keep it up, and let's stay in touch.
Awesome. Thank you, Shane. God bless.
Thank you. You too.